Good morning. Good morning, Blue Tech Summit attendees. I'm Linda Kurakawa, and I'm the Executive Director for Community Education and Workforce Development at Mira Costa College in beautiful North San Diego County. And we welcome you this morning for those of you who are on the West Coast of the United States. It is early, and for those of you for other parts of the world, you may have already had some or most of your day, and so you'll have to let us know how it went so we know what to expect. This morning, I have the honor of introducing somebody I have been able to get to know over the last 5 or 6 years. I get to introduce our keynote speaker for the Blue Economy Workforce of Tomorrow symposiums today. And so I get to introduce Dr. Shashi Kumar. And Dr. Kumar was appointed the MARAD Deputy Associate Administrator and National Coordinator of Maritime Education and Training in November 2015 for the United States. Dr. Kumar earned a doctorate of philosophy from the University of Wales in the United Kingdom, and a Master of Science from the Maine Maritime Academy, and a Bachelor of Science from the Indian Maritime Academy. So this is somebody with a lot of international experience. Dr. Kumar brings together 4 decades of exceptional academic and maritime industry leadership and experience. He is the founding dean of the Loeb Sullivan School of International Business and Logistics at the Maine Maritime Academy, where he is an emeritus professor, and the 12th Chief Academic Officer at the U.S. Merchant Marine Academy, where he also served 3 terms as the interim superintendent. As a Fulbright senior specialist assigned to the Republic of Ireland in 2012, he assisted Irish public-private partnerships in their research capacity building initiatives. Dr. Kumar has received more awards and accommodations for outstanding leadership than can be easily mentioned today. But one in particular was the U.S. Transportation Secretary's Outstanding Achievement Gold Medal. And so with not too many more examples of his amazing leadership and the outstanding work that he's done in the area of the blue economy, it is truly my pleasure to introduce Dr. Shashi Kumar as our keynote speaker this morning. Dr. Kumar, good morning.
Good morning, Linda. A quick sound check. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right. Very good. Thank you. Thank you for all those kind words and the introduction. I hope I can live up to your expectations. It's my privilege, my pleasure speaking this morning, kicking off the discussions on blue economy workforce of tomorrow. Thank you for inviting me. My sincere gratitude to the Maritime Alliance and to the organizers of this Tech Week. Now, so my focus this morning is to highlight the role played by my employer, which is the U.S. Maritime Administration, in terms of the blue economy workforce. So, may I have the next slide, please? So here you can see my outline. My goal is to, first of all, show the nexus between what we do here at my agency with what your interest is, which is the blue economy. I'll also talk a little bit about our mission, vision, and strategic goals, and then some of the key program elements, and spend more of my time, or in fact, most of my time on the education training we provide in this regard. So let me move on to the next slide, please. All right, so when you look at this slide here from the World Bank, there is no aspect of this where my agency doesn't play at least a peripheral role. Maritime transport, obviously we play a major role in it. That's our bread and butter. We foster the maritime industry in this country. If you look at any other elements there, be that tourism, climate change, all the good things out there, yes, we do play a role. And also we play a role in some of the not so good things, such as the pollution that the oceans have experienced over the years. So the relationship between us, the Maritime Administration, or MARAD, as we are often referred to, and the blue economy is symbiotic. So my goal is to highlight some of those connections, some of that nexus between us through the next few slides. Next slide, please. So this slide here captures our mission, vision, and strategic goals. So the mission is to foster, to promote, to develop the maritime industry of the United States to meet our economic and national security needs. We certainly want to build a world-class maritime transportation system. For those of you who are from Southern California, especially in light of all the supply chain bottlenecks that you keep hearing about today, you know very well that we have a lot of ground to cover in this area. Building a world-class maritime transportation system, the infrastructure to facilitate that, that's part of our vision. Now, looking at the strategic goals, I'm not going to go through all the goals listed here, but the key items that I will be touching upon today is, for example, the second one, maintaining and modernizing the maritime workforce. In other words, inspiring, educating, expanding the opportunities for next generation of mariners, which now we have expanded to the next generation of maritime workforce, including maximizing the potential of the Federal Academy that we are responsible for running. And the last bullet there, the maritime innovation, driving innovation within the US maritime industry. May I move to the next slide? All right, so in this slide, there are key areas where we focus on. There is the national security part of it, which is our biggest component. Then there is the the national economy and domestic relief part of it. So for example, when there is an earthquake or a hurricane or similar natural disasters, we are deeply involved in the humanitarian aid and disaster relief activities. We work closely with the Department of Homeland Security, with FEMA, US Coast Guard, and other federal agencies in providing support, providing shelter, delivering supplies, medical supplies, and so forth. And the third component, that's where I really want to focus on today, which is the education and training part. What are some of the key areas that we are fundamentally involved in? There is the oversight and operation of the Federal Academy at Kings Point, New York. Then providing training vessels and assistance to 6 state maritime academies located in 6 different states. And then the last component of our triangle at this point, or of our mission at this point, which is establishing and fostering the centers of excellence for domestic maritime workforce training and education. So I will talk about each of these 3 areas in more detail later on, but let's move on to the next slide. This slide shows exactly where we spend our money on. So in other words, as the old saying goes, show me where the money is. So that's where this is. I mean, we are not a big agency. We are a very small agency within the Department of Transportation. The US Department of Transportation is a huge agency, as many of you know. Our budget is slightly over $1 billion, in fact, about $1.5 billion at this point. And about 47% or close to 50% of our federal funds go towards national security. And I'll talk about a little bit of that as we proceed. And also we spend about 20% on other areas and about 30% plus on higher education. So The education component, about 32%, is what we spend right now on the federal academies, the state academies, and other programs that we support. And we have very little discretionary funds, by the way. All the funds that we get are dedicated funds. Congress tells us you will spend this money on this, that money on that, and so forth. So we are pretty much a flow through agency. We provide the oversight, the administration, the support, the fostering, etc. In terms of discretionary spending, we have very little money. In fact, I would say to the point of saying it is zero. Let's move to the next slide. Okay, here are some of our key program elements. There is the federal strategic sea lift, under which we operate 41 ships of our own, government-owned ships. These ships are used to provide logistical support to the military, to the Army in particular, and the Marine Corps. And then we have the workforce development part, which is, once again, the area of our focus this morning. And we have the maritime infrastructure and waterways. So, for example, the ports, they come under us. It's not in my office, but it's in a different office. And you may have heard from the bill that President Biden signed off yesterday, the infrastructure bill, which gives about $17 billion to the port, which is going to be a significant infusion of funds into this office to provide infrastructure building support for all American ports nationwide. And lastly, there is the industrial base support. And the key element here is the clean shipping part of it, which has got some very important aspects of supporting the blue economy. So let's move on to that next slide. Here, this is our Office of Environment and Compliance, which does a lot of different things. There's the Office of Safety, Office of Security, but it's the Office of Environment, which has got a grant program. This program is called the META program, or the Maritime Environmental and Technical Assistance Program. Some of the key aspects where they provide support include ballast water treatment from ships, hull fouling, that's the bottom part of the ship when they cause damage to the ocean, vessel and port air emissions in order to clean up the air, port electrification, energy efficiency, making use of biofuels, fuel cells, liquefied natural gas, hybrid, and batteries. I mean, we are, the industry, the maritime industry is at a very critical turning point right now. As important as 200 years ago when we switched over from sail to steam engines. And now we are looking at what is the next phase of propulsion for ships. As we all know, there was the Glasgow summit that happened. And with the push towards decarbonization and zero emissions, the shipping industry is going through some significant changes as to what will be the fuel of the future. By the year 2030, we are expected to make some significant decisions as to where the industry is heading towards. So this office is providing a variety of support in those areas through a grant program, which again is going to get a lot more attention under the current administration. The next slide, please. Now, I mentioned earlier about federal sea lift and the ships that we operate. We are responsible for running what's called the Ready Reserve Force, as well as the National Defense Reserve Fleet, and a fleet of training ships. The Ready Reserve Force consists of 41 cargo ships. These ships are maintained by us in a state of readiness. They can be activated in 5 to 10 days' time, depending upon what the military wants us to do. So if the US Transcom, which is the command responsible for providing logistical support to our armed forces anywhere in the world, if they tell us that we need a ship to transport ammunition or tanks and other sort of artillery items to, let's say, another corner of the world, we get our ship ready, crew the ship, everything is ready for sailing in 5 to 10 days, depending upon what's the level of urgency. That's 41 ships that we maintain for that purpose. The NDRF consists of 32 ships. These are stored in different locations, including a few in California. And we also have 8 NDRF vessels, which are used as training ships. These are used by the maritime academies for providing the necessary hands-on training for our students, or what we call cadets, enrolled at the state maritime academies and at the federal academy. Now, let's move on to the next slide. So the education, the mariner education, this is a role that we began starting from the Merchant Marine Act of 1936. Well, even before that, I would say starting from the 1850s, we have played, or the US government has played, somewhat of a peripheral role in providing mariner education. But it was formalized in 1936 through the Merchant Marine Act of 1936 to provide support for maritime education. It became part of our mission starting from that year. So we operate the Federal Merchant Marine Academy, Kings Point, New York, and 6 state maritime academies. The objective is to provide training education for merchant mariners with a certain type of credential that are required to operate the big ships that our military needs, which I showed in the previous slide, the Ready Reserve Force ships, which will carry cargo for the Army and the Marine Corps and so forth. So in order to work on those ships, we need what we call sea lift qualified merchant mariners. That's what these academies facilitate in graduating. Next slide, please. So in that role, there is the US Merchant Marine Academy, Kings Point, New York. This is one of the 5 federal academies, the other 4 being the West Point, the Annapolis Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy, Colorado Springs, and the Coast Guard Academy in Connecticut. So here, the Merchant Marine Academy, Kings Point, New York, issues a Bachelor of Science degree, a US Coast Guard credential, as well as commission in one of the US Armed Forces. Typically, we graduate around 225, around that many engineering and navigation graduates every year. 30 to 40% of them join the military. The other 70 to 60% will join the merchant marine as officers. And they also constitute about a quarter of all merchant mariner officers with the unlimited credentials required to operate the Ready Reserve Force ships, which are essential to support the military needs of our nation. Next slide. The 6 state maritime academies, they are strategically located from Maine around the coast, including one in California. There is the California Maritime Academy, Vallejo, California, Massachusetts Maritime Academy, Great Lakes Maritime Academy, Maine Maritime Academy, Texas Maritime Academy, and SUNY Maritime College in New York. So these are the 6 state maritime academies. We provide financial support as well as their training platform. The training ship that they all use is provided by us. Next slide. This is the last part of our currently established training mandate, and that is the Centers of Excellence program for domestic maritime workforce training and education. As per the authority provided to the Secretary of Transportation through the National Defense Authorization Act of 2018, we can designate centers of excellence in certain locations, such as in the Gulf of Mexico, Atlantic Ocean East Coast, the Long Island Sound, the Pacific Ocean West Coast, the Great Lakes area, the Mississippi River system, as well as in the Arctic or Gulf of Alaska. The institutions must be either a community or technical college, a maritime training center, or a group of community or technical colleges and or maritime training centers. Next slide. There are certain criteria that the applicant institutions must meet, and through the application process, which will be announced in various Federal Register notices. We will select the final selectees, the nominees. The very first nominees were announced on 19th of May 2021. There are 27 institutions, including the Mira Costa College right there in San Diego, which is how I came to know, I came to meet Linda. So this was my opportunity to meet several new friends as well as to engage, to learn about institutions that have programs that would support our mission, that we could designate as centers of excellence for domestic maritime workforce training and education. At this point, there are 18 community colleges, one technical college, two groups of community or technical colleges, and 6 maritime training centers that come under this category. Next slide, please. This is an interactive map that you can see from our website. You can click on any one of our centers of excellence from this site and learn more about the programs offered by those institutions and when they were approved and so forth. So all those local details can be gathered from this interactive GIS map. Next slide, please. So what's our expectation from here? Well, historically, our role was educating, training mariners for the deep seas, or what we call the blue water mariners. These are people sailing on big ships. This one, with the introduction of the Centers of Excellence program, what we have done is to make a historic change in our maritime workforce training mission, shifting or expanding from just the blue water mariners to mariners as well as maritime workers. These are either people pursuing shore-based careers or afloat careers. So in other words, working on ships, tugboats, barges, etc., or those who are working ashore, be that in the port sector or in the intermodal sector and other areas of the logistics supply chain system. So the intent is to support workforce needs of the local, state, or regional economy, enhancing the STEM competencies of the local workforce, promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion amongst our student body, offer a broad-based curriculum, and above all, to promote innovation within the next generation of workforce. Next slide, please. So in order to facilitate this, we can enter into cooperative agreements with these institutions who are capable of providing innovative programs that are appropriate for their own local areas. They can recruit and admit, train students based on the needs of the local economy. They can recruit and train the faculty, enhance facilities, create new maritime career pathways, be that ocean-related or onshore, such as working in a shipyard, etc. Any activities that we believe will support the needs of the future maritime workforce will be supported by us. Next slide, please. Another key aspect of this is innovation. I touched upon this earlier. The intention is that the centers of excellence and the institutions that we nominate as centers of excellence will prepare students for all the diversity that we can anticipate in future years, not just those for the traditional maritime-based careers, but for the entire industry as well as the blue economy. We already see a significant amount of interest in promoting careers for the offshore wind industry. Several institutions have expressed an interest in pursuing those areas, be that workers needed for the offshore wind sector, or be that workers needed for supporting the needs of the emerging maritime fleet, which will make use of significant levels of artificial intelligence and other STEM capabilities. We strongly believe that the COE program, the Centers of Excellence program, will also be sort of like a pathway to build new careers, promote opportunities for those enrolled in maritime high schools. This is another key aspect of our strategy, our portfolio. At this point, nationwide, there are around 70 maritime high schools. We, we believe that these maritime high schools will provide a significant opportunity for students to pursue new career tracks, be that through subsequent enrollment in community colleges or through the maritime academies and other universities and so forth. So this is what our vision. And let me go to the next slide, which is sort of the concluding slide. Again, starting with the World Bank slide, which I did up front. Once again, looking at any one of these angles, we believe the maritime administration and the maritime industry has a significant role to play, which we will facilitate through our workforce development activities, through our enhanced activities, not just the blue water mariners, but those who are working on other aspects of maritime-based careers. With that, I will conclude, and I don't know what's the format. If there is an opportunity for any questions to answer, I'll be happy to respond to some questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar. The amount of things that you are responsible for throughout the country is mind-boggling.
Thank you, Linda.
Yes. I am not seeing any questions that have come up at this time. And we are 1 minute away from our next session. So all I can do is thank you on behalf of all of our educational institutions and of course the audience for the work that you do so well and the time that you devote towards expanding our vision for the blue economy, expanding our education for the blue economy, and making sure that our oceans and waterways are safeguarded, because I think that sustainability and where we're going as a planet in terms of our ocean could not be more important. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda. Once again, sustainability, that's a key word. Yes, we will be working towards that more and more in future years.
We do have, actually, I'm seeing, I've